All right, we got into a lot of issues this week, and they're going to be even bigger issues next week when they come to a head here. Stop and Frisk on trial Monday. We anticipate closing arguments in the federal case. City looking to defend the NYPD practice. Here's what the plaintiffs would like to see.
Well, the best outcome is that they stop doing this, random suspicionless stops and frisk. The best outcome is that they start respecting communities of color.
All right, Dominic, so just remind everybody, this ain't a jury trial. This is a judge, and the judge very invested in this issue, and she's got a record.
But one good thing for the plaintiffs, this is a federal judge, Judge Scheinlin, so you just can't ignore her or call her a partisan, even though they've tried, the Bloomberg administration. Closing arguments are on Monday. We'll be there from the moment from the moment court starts to the moment the judge is done. The city will go first, followed with the closing arguments, followed by the prosecution. And then the part that's not so good for us in the media is that it could take up to 2 months, if not longer, for the judge to release her ruling.
But be clear, you believe this is going to have an impact on the mayoral race, one way or the other?
Yes, but things are lining up so much behind Bill Thompson, who knows? And he's already said that he wants to. Every Republican I run into every day is saying, well, yeah, we're endorsing Bill Thompson. We're with him. And I'm like, huh? Really? It's starting to scare me. Some said it yesterday. I won't say who, because never mind.
Well, D'Amato's on record as saying he is, yes. All right, let's get to our next issue here, and that's the next chapter in the 4-year-old Westchester County housing suit and settlement. Jessica's listening to this one. On Monday, legislators, this coming Monday, they're expected to okay the court's long overdue source of income legislation. Essentially makes it illegal for a prospective landlord to use information about government rent assistance or as a rationale for not letting somebody rent there. County Exec Rob Astorino, he vetoed this same law 3 years ago. He now says he will sign the legislation if it passes Monday, as we said, as is expected to, because he told us on Wednesday. If he doesn't, he and the county will be held in contempt, but insists, despite that contempt threat, he and the county are all in compliance with the settlement. Absolutely. You're going to have to capitulate. At the end of the day, the very agreement you vetoed, you're now going to have to do.
Not the agreement, the legislation, because I didn't think that we needed to do that. That was the interpretation. A federal magistrate.
You're going to end up having to do it.
That's not a problem. We are in compliance with that. We're going to do that.
Well,
the source of income legislation. Yeah, well, we're already in compliance.
And we went around and around. Now, Jessica, you work with Rob here. The basic question I keep hearing is, what was the point? This thing's lasted. I mean, in this building, I did the debate with Rob and then County Executive Andy Spano. This issue cost Spano, one would argue in a narrow election, even cost him his job. But yet 4 years later, we're still talking about this thing. We got through all the legal fights, all the editorials, and all the papers and everything else, and all the back and forth, and we're still exactly where we were, except the feds up and down the food chain are all threatening the county if they don't get with the program. We're looking at huge exposure.
Well, we're not exactly where we were then, because the ironic thing is that the housing is getting built, and they've been ahead of schedule in terms of actually building the units of housing, which was the point of the original point of the whole settlement. But when you look at
yes. That was a part of it. It wasn't the whole thing.
It was the major crux of the settlement, was to build 750 units of fair and affordable housing.
And
but
with conditions.
When you look,
with conditions.
Right, in certain municipalities. But when you look at what Rob was talking about specifically, which is the source of income legislation, the settlement stated the county executive shall promote source of income legislation. It's completely vague language. And Rob's position when he vetoed the bill was that it is not fair to mandate that anyone, even, you have a 90-year-old woman that's renting out her basement apartment, that she should be forced to go into business with the federal government. Now, he felt that that was something that the county should fight, that the current county executive at the time had promoted the legislation and fulfilled his obligations. So he lost, and now they're going forward with the legislation. So I don't understand
First of all, the settlement was building the houses and removing the obstacles to fair housing, which the county has not done. And every time that the county executive has gone and said, please approve this plan that we have to remedy the problems that you said existed, the court has come back, or the monitor has come back, or HUD has come back and said, no, that's not going to do it. It's a little bit akin to you know, the 37 or 39 repeals of Obamacare, which is, the procedure is nice, but it's not actually moving the needle, it's not actually changing the game. The county executive is going to sign on Monday or on Tuesday after this thing passes, something that he vetoed 3 years ago, and there's still a contempt order or a contempt threat that's being held over the county executive and
we're looking at $7 million a year of funding that we haven't seen in the last year and a half to more than two. And there's still a threat here of major contempt charges and major dollars that the county can still
to
look
simplify for folks who aren't as invested in this as we are, it's still not cleaned up. There's still this mess in Westchester County.
It's actually a very simple issue, though. The settlement called for certain things. They're moving ahead with doing it. The Monitor has approved all of the units that they're building. The Monitor has approved
that's
those.
one leg of the three that are in this. The obstacles include source of income legislation, and it also includes the zoning issue. And the county executive has been fighting tooth and nail on both those fronts.
The zoning issue has to play into the fact that the municipalities where the housing is supposed to be built are cooperating. So why should he have to turn around and sue municipalities for their own zoning laws?
I can only tell you this much. This will definitely come up between now and November.
Absolutely, and
this
it
will be an
should.
election issue. And interestingly, the county executive, I know, thinks that this is a winning issue for him, and I know that the mayor of New Rochelle says otherwise. We're going to find out, though, obviously. Now, real quickly, one thing we did also talk about this week, and I know we all agree on this, outrageous. The data coming out on sexual assaults in the military. We had a compelling conversation yesterday with a victim, one of the tailhook victims you remember from the early 90s, where she was assaulted and eventually quit her military position because of it. We've heard data that makes your jaw drop, and then we've seen 2 instances where people whose job it was to enforce, to make sure there isn't sexual harassment, actually assaulted women themselves. One guy putting a woman into prostitution. So we're going to have much more on this. We'll be joined by Senator Gillibrand, we believe, next week to talk about this issue as well. All right, Jessica, Dominic, Andrew, guys, thank you very much. When I come back, a dark money in politics conversation up next. We're going to explain why it's so important that we learn who's given what when it comes to campaigns. And by that, I even mean the corporations. Stay with us.